know about you, but this week was definitely a wilderness journey for me. Hopefully not as bad for you, but I know that if it wasn't this week, it was probably last week, or unfortunately might be this week for you. Mine was this past week for sure. It was one of those that I wasn't wandering around in the wilderness, I was face planted into the sand. Over and over, it seemed every day. My journal reflects this. My usually, really tiny, can't read it font is suddenly very frustrated and large. Exclamation points, sharp angles of letters. I'm doing a study right now for my personal walk with God on the wonder of God, the wonders of God. And part of that is keeping a section in the book on the wonders of God that He's showing you in your life. And every day you're supposed to write down the wonders of God. And there's just a couple days in there, when you're going through the wilderness, I kind of begrudgingly didn't want to acknowledge that any good was going on. Because there was so much bad, it seemed, that wasn't working. The computers were freezing up. No matter how many times I slammed them, they didn't work. I had hours that I spent trying to work on a project that seemed to net little productivity. Over and over, just, all of this, and all of a sudden I'm sitting there just frustrated. My Wonders journal is like curt one words. Okay, I'm happy for the cat. Fine. Is that good? And all of a sudden my pens just, fall down from my bookshelf, a whole bunch of pens, and they go spewing in chaos all over my desk and floor. And I just sat there and said, yeah, okay, sure. That's what this week looks like. That's it. Wilderness. Now that kind of wilderness, we've all been there, we've all experienced it, but that's pretty minor compared to what I would really consider a wilderness trek. And we probably have all experienced those as well, maybe experiencing them right now. Those are the ongoing challenges of troubled marriage, finances being on the rocks, the challenges of parenting teenagers, depression, sickness, whether large or small, when these things in our life affect our joy, our peace, our hope, our positive view of God, of others, of life, in longer terms, it seems, than usual, they count, I think, as serious wilderness treks, wilderness experiences. Wilderness, as we're going through this series of looking at the Israelites' journey through the wilderness, we're defining wilderness as those places, any places in our lives that either are bad or stay bad for a prolonged period of time or go from bad to worse. There's seasons where life is not the way we want it. We think life should be a certain way, and it's not. It's not comfortable. It's not easy. It's where we feel in whatever area that we don't have any way out. We're caught between a rock and a hard place, and sometimes we feel alone, and sometimes we think it's just going to last forever with no end in sight. And our hope and our spark and our joy seems to flicker out more often than not and have a hard time getting relit. I don't know if that is where you're at, or you've been there, or you're struggling. I think humanity in this world that has so much of the darkness and wilderness, we're going to run into that and experience that if we're not already right now. And as I'm studying the Israelites' journey, I'm looking through their trek and I'm saying how many times God keeps bringing them around to these unexpected negative experiences, these challenging places. I'm wondering if perhaps He's wanting them and wanting us as we study about them to somehow open our eyes, the eyes of our hearts, to perhaps change our perspective, adjust our definitions of what's going on when these things come along in our lives, when we enter these wilderness seasons. I wonder if He wants us to start expecting the unexpected, to try to expect the good, even when all we can see is bad around us. We saw a video, hopefully most of you saw that at the very beginning of when we gathered together here this morning, the obstacle course. We saw, has anybody been to such an obstacle course that we saw in the video, where they have the mud? You have. Now, Chuck, you've actually led kind of a mud journey, right, with teenagers. Ropes, mud, tunnels that you shouldn't be able to fit in, water, dirt, climbing over barriers, obstacle courses. Now, not normally would those kind of places in the normal path of life be attractive to us, would they? We would avoid the mud. We would avoid having, if we can get from A to B without crawling through a tunnel of water and dirt, we would normally, right? And yet how many did we see voluntarily sign up for this obstacle course? And quite frankly, it looked really fun. And someone mentioned, hey, we could do that on our property. So anybody want to start digging? We can have that. I loved how one of the videos, I was looking at several of them, of these obstacle courses, and one of them termed it the Playground of Adventure. And as they went through different clips of it, there are different people who had participated, gave their thoughts, gave their feedback. It was fun. We're mad and lunatics to do it, but it was fun. I was up to my thighs in mud. I thought I was going to die. It was so great because it was a sense of achievement on the other side. There was people helping you. We got to test ourselves out. What I didn't think I could do, I suddenly realized I could. And it was a fantastic experience. Now, the point is that if we're facing a wilderness experience in our life, is there any possibility that in the midst of feeling like we're dying, or that we're going to die, that it can also be fantastic too, like the obstacle course experience? And I wonder if God wants us to have that kind of new experience so we can look at our wilderness like an obstacle course. What if we could approach it in the same way, where knowing that whatever we're about to step into, it's going to strengthen us. It's going to build relationship, not only between whoever we're going through it with, but also between God and us. What if we approach the wilderness experience like an obstacle course because we know that we don't go it alone, but there's someone who travels with us through the dark tunnels, through the mud and muck and streams and all of that, clearing our path, making sure our steps are sure, protecting us, making sure that we're going in the direction to get to the destination and the purpose He has in mind for us. Maybe we could have the same enthusiasm. Can you imagine that? Whatever you're facing right now, this was very real to me this week as I was writing this. I'm like, okay, God, help me get that perspective. To face, I would sign up for an obstacle course like that. Help me have that same fervor, that same 100% confidence in you, that I can step into what you're calling me to with that same kind of perspective. Well, we'll see. We're all on a journey, right? That's what I'm hoping to get to. And part of that getting to is looking at how did others handle it? How in the Bible, what did God continually do to help teach the Israelites? They had a lot of obstacle course chances in the Old Testament. We left off last week in Exodus 13. The Israelites had gone south instead of going across the map to Canaan. They went south, a longer route around, and God camped them first at Etham. Etham, where they had a full view of the desert. And then we come, if you open your Bibles to Exodus 14. Exodus 14, we're going to continue on and see where else God led them. Exodus 14, verse 2. So then the Lord said to Moses, tell the Israelites, they're camping at Etham, they're on the edge of the wilderness, and God's saying you're going in. And He says, tell the Israelites to turn back and encamp near Pi-hahiroth, what the heck? Pi-hahiroth? Ernie, how do I say that? Pi-hahiroth. Between Migdol and the sea. They are to encamp by the sea, directly opposite Baal-zephon. Okay, now if you're going on a map, do you remember the map we showed last week? Here there was Egypt. I'm going your way. Instead of going across to Canaan, they went down to Etham on the edge of the wilderness. Migdol was back up north. So God says, and the sea was in there. And so God says, all right, I'm going to take you to the wilderness. Whoops, now I want you to go back up between Migdol and position yourself in the sea, between Migdol and the sea. And it says, Pharaoh will think, the Israelites are wandering around the land in confusion. And I'm thinking the Israelites are thinking, we don't have to trick them. We really are confused. They'll think that we're wandering around the land in confusion, hemmed in by the desert. So I can imagine the Israelites. They finally said, okay, God, we're with you. As much as we don't understand this opposite direction of where we want to go, we're with you. And then he sends them going back north. Now, maybe at the beginning they started having hope. Okay, maybe he changed his mind. Maybe we're going to go back the easy route. And then, of course, not, because he helps them, he urges them, he instructs them to camp by the sea. As you read on, you see, as we know the story, then Pharaoh gathers his soldiers together to pursue the Israelites. And so the Israelites have the desert, with Pharaoh and his army coming, and the Red Sea. And the Red Sea. The Israelites faced Pharaoh and his enemies, and their enemies coming against them. For us, what is your Red Sea experience? What is the Red Sea experience? Maybe it's the worst case scenario. The lab results came back and they're positive. The divorce papers arrived. The job that you didn't want is the only one that calls you. And you have nowhere to go. Whatever that rock and a hard place is, it feels like death is either end of the spectrum. You have no choice, no way out. And so the Israelites cry out. In verse 11, chapter 14, verse 11, they said to Moses, was it because there were no graves in Egypt that you brought us to the desert to die? What have you done to us by bringing us out of Egypt? Didn't we say to you in Egypt, leave us alone, let us serve the Egyptians? It would have been better for us to serve the Egyptians than to die in the desert. And it's kind of humorous, actually, when they say, were there no graves in Egypt that you had to bring us out to the desert to die? Egypt's culture was all about death. They had graves aplenty. They were about death, they were about the afterlife, they were enthralled with the whole thing. So a commentator looks at this, it's like a little bit of sarcastic humor the Israelites were offering here. Would have been better had you left us in slavery. Would have been better if you left us in the life that I had before. What have you done to us? It's so in your face, and yet I look at that and I think, gosh, we're not far from the Israelites, are we? When we face challenges, when challenges come our way that we did not ask for, isn't that the time that we start questioning God's wisdom? We look at things that aren't going the way that we want them to go or need them to go, and we question if God is really leading. Does he really have a plan? Is he really doing what needs to be done to bring out the best like he says he does for us? Let me just ask you, how often, in all honesty, you don't have to say this out loud, how often do you question God, question his guidance in your life? Did you say never? Seldom? Sometimes? Often? I asked myself that question as I'm riding along, and I had to answer very honestly, since that's what I'm supposed to be doing. Often. How often do you question God's guidance? Often. But then I quickly put some asterisks down and some explanations. Often because I'm a skeptic. Often because I'm very analytical. You know, and I want to look at all this, and it's not that I doubt his ability. It's not that I doubt his ability. I just kind of wonder about his routes. Like, the wisdom seems to be a little off. You know, off from where I'd like to be. And I just want to make sure, when I question, I just want to make sure that's his final answer. You know, like The Bachelor. Are you sure you want to give the rose to that path? As I was writing that, I don't doubt his ability, just his wisdom on the routes he chooses. God kind of tapped me and he's like, well, let me just ask you, if you don't doubt my ability, what difference does the route I choose make? If you really don't doubt my ability, What difference does the route I choose for you make? If you don't doubt my ability to bring you joy, if you don't doubt my ability to clear the problems, to work through you, to give you peace, to bring you the power that you need, the grace, the resources, the money, the people, the solutions, if you don't doubt that, then what difference does the direction or the timing or the process make? Because if God can handle anything that needs to be handled, then why do I worry? It comes down to a trust issue. Do I really trust him to handle it? And how can we move more quickly from doubt to confidence? Doubt to confidence. Seems like there's always a process, but man, I want to get through that process faster. Not have to worry and be up nights trying to figure it out. The Red Sea, the Israelites, when they had the Red Sea on one side, Pharaoh on the other, they expected doom. They expected the worst, death. But God did the unexpected, didn't he? God delivered them straight through the water. Not around it, not over it, but he brought them straight through the middle, the wildest center, where there's a no way I'm going to make this work. In the darkest depths, in the swirling sea, is where God brought freedom. Right through the middle of the worst case scenario, God prevailed. But the wilderness course was just getting warmed up. God continued to choose routes that the Israelites didn't like. And he continued to bring them to the brink of danger and death. They got through the Red Sea. They celebrated, the next chapter is all celebrating the wondrous works of God, his power, his presence. And then he leads them into the wilderness of Shur. S-H-U-R. Shur. Now, Shur actually means barrier or wall, which is quite appropriate because the Israelites, I'm sure, felt like they were hitting another barrier to getting to the promised land. But it's also kind of ironic in English, the wilderness of Shur. If it was S-U-R-E, that's completely opposite of how the Israelites were feeling. Sure about nothing, except they were spinning wheels in the desert again. So God brings them along. After they got out of the desert, they're incredibly thirsty. They have 3 long, hot days that they walk after the Red Sea, dehydrated, looking for a water hole, something that's going to give them relief. And then they find Mara. Exodus 15. Exodus 15, verse 22-24. Then Moses led Israel from the Red Sea, and they went into the desert of Shur. For 3 days they traveled in the desert without finding water. When they came to Mara, they could not drink it. They could not drink its water because it was bitter. And that's why the place is called Mara, which means bitter. So they're dehydrated, they're thirsty, it's hot in the desert, and finally they're like, yes, there's a watering hole. And when they get up to it, it's not fit for humans to drink. And it's brackish, salt, minerals, maybe a little poison in there. The human body can only tolerate about, 3 to 5 days going without water. So imagine the Israelites' extreme frustration, anger, disgust. Why would God allow thirsty Israelites to arrive at a place with undrinkable water? Why would God allow thirsty Israelites to arrive at a place with undrinkable water? I imagine it felt like salt in the wound. So much of what keeps us going through our wilderness experiences, through those tough times that we're struggling with, those seasons in our life, is the belief that relief is not far away. That is just around the corner. There's going to be a breakthrough, that God will deliver. He will bring a solution. And to have the carrot yanked away would be bitterness indeed. We've all experienced these Mara places, like the Israelites, those situations in our lives where there's a shimmering of possibility and hope. And before it can be fully grasped into our lives, it disappears, and we're left unsatisfied and disappointed again. It's the new position that you thought was going to bring you lots of money. Great, but it also means longer hours and more travel time away from your family. It's the medicine that was supposed to work to make you feel better, to cure, whatever, and it doesn't. It's the investment that's sure to pay off. You put it all there for that with that company, and it's now the company's belly up and your bills are stacking up. It's a relationship that you're sure is going to move to the next level finally, and then it goes radio silent. Nothing happens. Whatever is in your blank, that's your Mara. That's your Mara. The Israelites expected, when they arrived at the watering hole, the Israelites expected Mara was going to satisfy them. That was going to quench their thirst. And if that didn't do it, then surely God would do something else. He would create a cactus or turn the sand into San Pellegrino. Something. But God does the unexpected. He says, true satisfaction is in me. It doesn't come from the earth. It doesn't come from what the world offers. It doesn't come from your own ideas or reliance on your own solutions. It comes from me. And I think it was another heart check, another stop in the desert to say, what are you really thirsty for, Israel? Is it a temporary fix? Is it momentary relief? Is it physical satisfaction? Or do you yet long for something deeper that's going to impact and change your life, your heart, your soul? And so I think God makes his point. He doesn't move them on from the bitterness, but instead he transforms it. He does a miracle of transformation. He has Moses throw wood into the water, and it turns the bitterness to sweetness. And I think in that moment it reveals that God, without God, nothing in this world is going to ever satisfy or quench the real thirst that's in us, the real deep thirst of our soul. I think David knew this. He wrote Psalm 63:1, God, you are my God. I will seek you earnestly. My soul thirsts for you. My flesh yearns for you in a dry and weary land where there is no water. I think it's interesting that the three main stops that God first has Israel go on, the Red Sea, Mara, and then we talked about last week how he brought them, it was actually after Mara, he brought them to Elim. Elim is the place of 12 springs. Talk about water, overflowing, refreshment, and blessing. But in each of these standpoints, I think God is saying he is the answer to our thirst issues. All of them. He's a creator of water, the living water, who pours himself out for us so that we might have life like nothing else can give for us. So whatever we're yearning for, whatever you're thirsting for, I think God, through each standpoint, says, trust me. Come to me. You will find relief through a relationship with me. When you rely on me, count on me, seek me for comfort and guidance and my leading of you. I will satisfy. I will refresh. I will quench what you need, for I am the Lord, your God. If you haven't received this yet, if you aren't experiencing that quenching, that satisfying, that longing that's being fulfilled, don't give up. God's timing is always perfect. He knows what he has in store for you. And he always has a plan, always has a plan. He knew what he was doing when he was leading Israel to the promised land. But he was leading them to him first and foremost, because there is no promised land living without him. By now we would expect that the Israelites, when they would face another challenge in their life, we would expect by now, with these amazing miracles, that they would start looking for God right away when things went south, right? They would think that perhaps they would start expecting his presence and his provision in the midst of what was empty and missing. Not once in this journey had God allowed their needs to go unmet. His timing, his solutions were perfect. And if you notice, in each of these situations thus far, and as we go through the journey of Israel, not once was it something that they did to fulfill their needs. They waited, and they were still, and they let God be God. But the unexpected, of course, happens instead. No matter how many times God provided his faithfulness to them, when another experience came, they forgot. They wailed. They complained. They worried. They despaired. They couldn't sleep. They got impatient and bit off their nails. Does that sound familiar? How many times God is faithful, and yet when we hit another rock wall, brick wall, another sea and desert experience, we suddenly say, oh my gosh, what's going to happen now? And that's where the Israelites were when they ran out of food. So God takes them from the sea to Mara to Elim, and they're in the desert 1.5 months after they left Egypt, and they ran out of food. Exodus 16, 1 through 3. The whole Israelite community set out from Elim and came to the desert of Sin, which is between Elim and Sinai, on the 15th day of the 2nd month after they had come out of Egypt. In the desert, the whole community grumbled against Moses and Aaron. The Israelites said to them, if only we had died by the Lord's hand in Egypt. There we sat around pots of meat and ate all the food we wanted. But you have brought us out into this desert to starve this entire assembly to death. They didn't mince words, did they? Got right to the point. So we had visited last couple weeks ago about Numbers, how they were longing for the garlic and the onion and the fish. Well, here's another perspective. In Exodus, they had, I love the picture, we had pots of meat. We had all the food we could want. I mean, it was all about life our way, our terms, and it was good. Why did you free us from being slaves? We loved it there. So here we are. Here we are again. God's taken them from Egypt, wandering around, goes south instead of north, and back up north, then heads to the wilderness, out of Etham, back north, then south to the Red Sea, then Mara to Elim, and now to being hungry. But if you start to look back, if you're following the scripture verses and you're looking through, there's a phrase that God continues to repeat that gives a clue that maybe they should start expecting what they don't expect until they expect the unexpected, with God's leading, his power and provision. Exodus 16:4 gives the first clue. Then the Lord said to Moses, I will rain down bread from heaven for you. The people are to go out each day and gather enough for that day. In this way, I will test them and see whether they will follow my instructions. If you go back up to chapter 15, verse 25, after Mara, then Moses had cried out to the Lord, and the Lord showed him a piece of wood. He threw it into the water, and the water became sweet. There the Lord made a decree and a law for them, and there he tested them. And then you flip over to Deuteronomy. Deuteronomy 8:2. This is after they've already gotten to the promised land, and they're remembering back. And he says, remember how the Lord your God led you all the way in the desert these 40 years, to humble you and to test you in order to know what was in your heart, whether or not you would keep his commands. God, at each step, was saying, I want to know where your heart is. I am going to reveal my provision, my presence, my power to them so they will know I am the Lord their God. They will only see that I'm the Lord their God when they realize they can't handle life on their own. And when they can't handle life on their own, then their eyes will be opened and they can see me and see my power, see my presence. I want them to trust me. So they'll come to me first. At the first sign of heading south, they're going to come to me. So then we'll see that I've got them in my sight at all times. I've got them in my hands. They are in the center of my heart. I wonder how the Israelites might have responded had they listened and seen God's perspective, that their hunger or their thirst or those stuck places in their life where spiritual building up a test. When you want to build up muscles, physical muscles, you first start with a weight you can handle, the 30 pounds, and then pretty soon you want to see if you can handle more. You test it out. You test your strength. You take a 50-pound whatever, and you try that. Are you strong enough now? Can you keep going? And so when God's doing the same strength testing, it's like, I want you to know that you are growing in strength in your trust and dependence on me. And so at each juncture, it's like God is doing this check with his people. He tests them. He comes to the desert door at Ether, and he's like, do they know? Do they see? I'm going to provide for them. No. So they go to the Red Sea wall. Do they get it now? He goes to Marah. Let's try again. Do they believe? He goes to Elim. What if I give them the 12 springs of refreshment and relief? Now will they trust me? The food runs out. Is their trust any stronger yet? Can they see that they can depend on me, that I'm here, that I'm leading, that I'm providing? And maybe, I wonder, would they have been more patient, less complaining? Instead of doom and gloom, would it be, wow, okay, all right, we don't have food. What's God going to do now? All right, another desert experience. What's God up to? If he's led me here, there must be something good that he's going to bring out of this. Because look at how he's provided and cared every other step of the way. Wouldn't that be amazing if you and I could have that perspective? That attitude that when we face the hardest of times, our first response is, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? Instead, it's, wow, what is God going to do now? Sign me up for that obstacle course. This is going to be a wild ride. Have you ever gotten a gift from someone that you loved or that loved you, and it's this big box, and you're like, oh man, this is going to be a good gift. And you open it up, and there's another present inside. You're like, oh, okay. All right, and then you open it up, and there's another present inside. And you keep going until you get down to this little present. And you're like, okay. All right, then you open it up, and it's empty. Okay, that was really cruel if they were like that. No, when I've had that experience, because the person loved me, I'm looking at this empty box, and I'm thinking, with all this buildup, there's got to be something really good. This is an adventure. He's going to send me on a little treasure hunt. But I know it's not going to be some meaningless little trinket I'm going to get. It's going to be something in quality, something good. And I wonder if God provided that gift as well. When they came to the place where they had no food, God created food out of nothing, out of nowhere. He provided. And had the Israelites had that same perspective, nothing? Oh, this is going to be really good then. If I have nothing in my life, nothing's working out, nothing's going, then he must be really working on me. He's going to be shaping my heart. He's going to be shaping someone else's heart that I'm going to be a part of. He is planning a purpose that I cannot even fathom. Because all he can give me is nothing. Because my brain won't even compute it. There's got to be something good. And that's what God did with the Israelites. When there's no food, he said, fine, I'm going to bring food to them. You look on in Exodus, and he talks about the evenings, quail. Quail just covers the camp. And in the morning, under the dew, they found Krispy Kreme donuts. If you look at other verses, about manna, it's described as using the finest oil, the flakiest layers, and it's sweet, like honey. And so one commentator actually compared it to Krispy Kreme donuts. I thought, how appropriate. I would be excited about manna. So here they are. God provides again. The Israelites did not do a thing except wait on God in his timing and his provision. And I think this time, in this particular situation, God allowed them to experience emptiness, allowed them to experience hunger and longing that only he could fill. They could not fill what they needed, but he put them in a prime position to see that what they can't do, he can fully satisfy, abundantly provide the lasting kind of filling that's needed. He satisfied not only their physical hunger, but also the hunger of their spirit and their heart. In Exodus 16:12, it says, I have heard the grumbling of the Israelites. Tell them at twilight you will eat meat, and in the morning you'll be filled with bread. Then you will know that I am the Lord, your God. You will know my heart. You will know my abilities. You will know me. God's number one priority for the Israelites and for us as he leads us, as that song said that we sang, the power of your love, it's to draw us close to him. He definitely had a plan to get the Israelites in close proximity of Canaan. But his number one goal was to get them in close proximity to him, in relationship to him, because he loved them and wanted them to have the best of the best. In Deuteronomy, go back to Deuteronomy 8. In Deuteronomy 8, 2-4, remember how the Lord your God led you all the way in the desert these 40 years to humble you and to test you in order to know what was in your heart, whether or not you would keep his commands. He humbled you, causing you to hunger, and then feeding you with manna, which neither you nor your fathers had known, to teach you that man does not live on bread alone, but on every word that comes from the mouth of the Lord. Your clothes did not wear out, and your feet did not swell during those 40 years. You flip over to 15, he continues, he led you through the vast and dreadful desert, that thirsty and waterless land with its venomous snakes and scorpions. He brought you water out of hard rock. He gave you manna to eat in the desert, something your fathers had not known, to humble you and to test you, so that in the end it might go well with you. You may say to yourself, my power and the strength of my hands have produced this wealth for me. But remember the Lord your God, for it is he who gives you the ability to produce wealth, and so confirms his covenant, which he swore to your forefathers, as it is today. You go back over to verse 9, he's talking about all of this. God was leading them to the promised land. He says, for the Lord your God is bringing you into a good land, a land with streams and pools of water, with springs flowing in the valleys and hills, a land with wheat and barley, vines and fig trees, pomegranates, olive oil and honey, a land where bread will not be scarce, and you will lack nothing. A land where you will lack nothing. As I was reading through this, I thought maybe when they finally reached the promised land, you could say that in full confidence, because by then they would be fully trusting that whatever came their way, he would provide. And so they did not want for anything. They did not lack anything because they had God so solidly in their sights that they knew they could 100% rely on him. Matthew 5:6, blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness. That's right living, connected with God, for they shall be satisfied. It's a definite. It is a promise. It's not an if and maybe. It's you will be satisfied. We question God's guidance. We're human beings. We do this. We question it because it doesn't match up with what we want. We doubt. And if it feels harder, if the way feels inconvenient, if it feels difficult or painful or lonely, if we sense that it's taking us beyond what we can handle, we kind of freak out a little bit. We think, I don't have the skills to handle this. I don't have the time. I don't have the energy. I don't have the experience. I don't have the strength, God, for this right now in my life. I don't have control or whatever it takes to get through this swiftly, happily, successfully, as far as I can see. And God says, you don't. But I do. As I was writing this, I'm looking at this, and God continues to journey, right? And I looked at that list of those very things that we don't have. When God sends us on a different wilderness journey and suddenly we feel empty and unsatisfied and ill-equipped to handle what's in front of us. Those very things that we lose and willingly or fight against are those things that we willingly give up when we go on a ride at Universal Studios. You weren't expecting that, were you? Universal. Does anyone like roller coasters here? Yes. Okay. There's a few. They're like, no, I'll pass on the wilderness. I'll pass on the roller coaster. Well, okay, when you go on a roller coaster ride, think about the biggest one you can possibly imagine. It has all the twists and turns and heights and all that. When you go to get on that, what are you giving up? You're giving up control, right? You're giving up control. You don't know the route. You're giving up familiarity. You can see it, but if you've never been on it before, you have no idea what to expect in terms of speed, how it's going to feel, where it's going to take you, lots of unknowns. You look at this looming course ahead of you, and while you're excited, you're freaking out. You're like, I'm going to go on that? Okay. Scary speeds. Scary speeds. Velocities that we don't even breathe in normal life. Obstacles. Obstacles that as you're zooming down the path, suddenly they'll like throw up a wall. And you're heading straight towards it, and just at the very last, they swerve away. Or you're going down this huge hill and you're looking at this tunnel that has a hole like that, and you think, we're never going to fit. And then pretty soon it suddenly gets opened and bigger and you can fit through it. You don't have the skills to save yourself if something goes wrong. You do not. You cannot hop out of the car and fix the rails. You can't stop it. You can't slow it down. If it decides to fly off the track, it's out and beyond your control. Mountains shrink in comparison to the heights that you sometimes go on. Who intentionally goes on a ride that plummets to the ground? We haven't even mentioned the darkness. The darkness that as you're going at high velocity speeds rips your guts apart as you're going around the turns, the twists and turns at fast speeds. And yet, we pay large sums of money to have this excitement and this experience in our life. I mean, just when I was reading and writing this, I'm like, I'm ready to go. I haven't been on a roller coaster ride for a long time. How exciting! But why are we willing to do this? Why are we willing to step into a roller coaster ride? Giving up all of these things that we so prize as human beings. Why are we willing to do that? What? Because we're crazy. Yes, we're lunatics at heart. We have faith that we're going to be safe. We have faith. History, having been on one before, experience, looking at stats. Okay, it says it's going to be safe. We feel somehow that the fear we're going to experience is going to be more than balanced out by the excitement, by the laughter, by the sensations that we're going to experience. The memories that we're going to make. Whoever we go on the ride with, somehow at the end of some scary, really scary ride, we're closer at the other end. We're like brothers, compadres. We conquered. Let's go take another one on. We become wiser. Have you ever watched a group of teenagers or preteens that have never gone on a scary ride before, and they're like, oh, I can't believe I'm going to do this, but we're going to do this ride. I can't believe we're going to do it, but we're going to do it. And so they get on and they're like, woo! And then they get off the ride, and there's this confidence. There's this like, oh, that was, I mean, it was, yeah, I had a couple scary parts, but that was nothing. Oh, just wait, you'll be able to handle it, no problem. And they have this language and this attitude. They're wiser. They've been pounded on the anvil, and they came out. They survived it. And they're proud of it. I don't know if you guys remember that first experience when you went on your roller coaster ride. They're sure, they're confident, they're ready for the next one. They have this wild look in their eye that's alive with mischievous pleasure. What makes it not so bad is because all we have to do is stay seated. All we have to do is keep still. All we have to do is try not doing what we don't have the ability to do anyway. We can't get out, we can't try walking or flying or changing the layout of the rails or find a light for the tunnel. We have to stay in the car and trust the engineer who designed it. We trust that we'll get to where we need to go if we stay still, if we let whoever is in charge be in charge and take us through the intended course. As a child, I was one of those children that I was very excited to get on a roller coaster, and yet I was fearful. So I was really happy when, nope, you're not tall enough. Okay, so, but you try to convince, when they're finally tall enough or old enough, if you have a child that's not like a crazy child, which are really wonderful, but if you have one of those that are like, and you're a parent who is so excited about sharing the experience of a roller coaster ride with your young one, you'll see a parent trying to convince their child, no, it's really safe, it's okay, and they're looking with terror in their eyes at this huge mess of metal that just says death machine. And their parent is saying, no, really, trust me. We're going to go fast, but it'll be okay. I'll be with you. We'll be all right. And so they're not ready. And so what do? We take them to It's a Small World. And we ride the boat. We ride the boat where just a pirate hops out. And woo! Okay, we survived that, right? Once you survive that, then we go to the teacups. And the teacups, they go swirling a little bit faster. And then from there we go to Shamu's little thing, you know? And then we build up. What are we building up? Their trust, their faith, their confidence that their experience, okay, if that was safe, if that was fun at the end, if I made it, then I can do this next one, and I can do this next one. And sure enough, by the time they're ready, they go on, they're like, strap me in, I'm ready. I am ready to go. I'm going to hang on tight, and I'll probably scream, but it's going to be good, because I've seen it, I've tasted it, I've experienced it. But a child is not stupid. They won't go by themselves, will they? You're not going to send them on by themselves. They want either their parent with them or their best friend. So they will not go through the craziness alone. Unless you become like little children, you will not enter the kingdom of God. Full trust. The kind of faith that says, okay, I'm not stupid. I may be willing to enter into that wilderness, into that obstacle course, into that crazy ride, but I'm not going to go through it alone. And I know that when you're with me, God, I can hold on. I can be still. I can trust that you know what you're doing. I can seek your words. I can seek your comfort, your peace. I can look again and again for reminders of your hope, reminders of your provision, reminders of your presence. And I know that because you designed me and designed this purpose in my life, we'll make it through. And at the end, what a ride it will be. And we'll live to tell the tale to someone else. What if we could look at our wilderness experiences like a wild ride at Universal or an obstacle course full of mud and tunnels you'll never fit through? Our good, our greater good, the highest of heights, God has guaranteed the greatest good for us comes through whatever He allows in our life. He will not put us through anything that does not position us for His purpose. Whether He's building our trust because of sheer velocities that we're going through or the swamplands we have to trudge through, it will draw us closer when we hang on. It will strengthen our dependency on Him and each other when we sit back and follow the rules, the guidelines by saying, I will be still and know. There's a verse in Exodus when they had the Red Sea at their backs and God was telling them to move forward. Moses answered the people, do not be afraid. Stand firm. Stand firm and you will see the deliverance the Lord will bring you today. The Lord will fight for you. You need only to be still. I want to end with one final look at what a wilderness experience can look like. I wrestled with this a lot this week, and I hope you will wrestle with it as well. That you'll say, God, give me a new perspective. Open my eyes, open my heart, that I can face whatever you've given me to face in my life right now, that I can look at it as a playground of adventure with you, knowing that you will pull me through. When we go with God, we go all the way, and He does not leave us unfulfilled. I want you to take a look at this last video, real quick, it's about a minute, and then we'll close. everyone do it. That's the plan. Larger than life with God. James 1, 2, and 4 says, consider it pure joy. Joy. Let's say that. Consider it pure
Joy.
joy, brothers and sisters, when you face trials of many kinds. Because you know that the testing of your faith develops perseverance. Perseverance must finish its work so that you may be mature, trusting God, depending on Him, staying connected hand in hand with God through it all. And you will be complete, not lacking anything. Promised land living will be yours. Let's pray. God, thank you. Thank you for the story, the history that we have. We can look through the pathway that you led over and over into obstacle courses and wilderness experiences and wild rides with the Israelites. And at every juncture, God, you did it so that they may see and know you are God. Let us walk with this in our lives as we go from here. As we face our own wilderness experiences, our own obstacle courses, God, shift our perspective, redefine our approach so that we can dive in and let life begin, even in the desert places with you. We thank you. We look forward to what you will do in your provision, your providing, your presence in our lives now and eternally. Thank you. In your name we pray. Amen.